Hey guys, Mr. Poki here, back again with another video. So today we'll be just taking a look at how my account went ahead to progress through MOC for the past 2 weeks. And I hope that this video will just serve as a benchmark as to all of other fellow players out there with a similar account to my caliber. This is not like a complete MOC guide because I understand everybody's account is going to have different sort of units. Some people may have Gepard or Bailu, which are fortunate enough, unfortunately not for me. Or some people's account may only have one Celia or one Jingyuan, which is going to be in a worse spot than me. But yeah, it's not meant to be an all-encompassing how to clear MOC guide, but it's just to help people to see that, especially if you guys have an account that's very similar to my level, right? How you guys can try to push through MOC as much as possible with whatever you have. So that I hope that this can be used as like a reference or a guide to try to achieve some similar standards such as mine, right? So without further ado, let's go ahead and take a look at how I've progressed so far in MOC. I just want to say that the actual difficulty itself between stage 1 and 5, I wouldn't say it's extremely difficult, but it's definitely not a walk in the park either. I definitely had to reset a few tries just for the full 3 stars. So yeah, it's definitely not meant to be easy. So if you guys have the patience to try to grind out the perfect RNG to make sure that your supports don't die and all that kind of stuff, then I think it's possible to do 15 stars relatively straightforward compared to all the later stages. So I'm just going to be going through stage by stage. Unfortunately, I don't really have the footage for 1, 2, and 3 because I think they are more or less pretty self-explanatory. It's really quite straightforward. I will be providing some footages from my clears in stage 4 and 5, as well as my attempt on stage 6, which I still haven't cleared up to this day, and I'll go through why this is the case. So without further ado, let's get started. Right, so for MOC 1, I think it's pretty straightforward. Gepard is gonna be, I would say, the harder boss between these two. So you would ideally want to place your hyper carries, at least the more developed carry, into the Gepard team, right? So because of this, I'll have opted to go for my Celia team into the Gepard, and then my Jingyuan team on top. So how do I build my comp in general? Now this applies to not just MOC 1, but it applies to MOC, every single MOC stage. So I think you guys can use some of the principles that I'm applying here to your own accounts, even if you don't have exactly the same units that I have or exactly the same degree of build that I have for my units. But I think some of the principles here can be applicable to everybody, right? So number 1, you always want to have 2 carries. So just decide which your carries are. So for me, it's going to be Celia and Jingyuan. Previously in the past, I have cleared MOC 1 as well, and I didn't have Jingyuan. So what I did previously was essentially just use Hook for my second carry. And then for this team, it's just going to be Fire MC, Hook, and Asta with March 7, because March 7 synergizes quite well with Fire MC since she gives everybody shield. So this was my old team, but for my new team, since I have Jingyuan now, my Jingyuan is going to be my hyper carry. So after settling the hyper carrying decision, what do you do for the rest, right? Next, you're going to want supports. So right now in the game, we currently have, I would say, 3 supports that are mainstream, right? So Asta, Tingyun, and Bronya. So how do you allocate this? As some of y'all who have checked out my CN Jingyuan analysis video, I would highly recommend you guys to pair Tingyun and Asta with Jingyuan, and then you pair Bronya with Celia, because this will give you the highest amount of synergy between both teams. Now, although Bronya and Tingyun should technically give Jingyuan a higher DPS, but Asta and Celia doesn't really work well with each other because she really wants the extra turn that's given by Bronya, and Bronya also buffs Celia's crit damage, which is something that she desperately needs to have the big, huge PP out damage that you can see from all the YouTube compilations. So yeah, Celia and Bronya in one team, and Jingyuan, Tingyun, and Asta in another team. And the reason why I put Tingyuan on top is because I know that my Jingyuan's degree of strength is not going to be as close to Celia, right? So my Celia is going to be stronger, and therefore I placed her in the stage with Gepard. Now this will change if the boss has a recommended type, which essentially happens if both bosses are weak to the element. If you see that the recommended type is, for example, if this stage recommended type is Quantum and this stage is Lightning, then feel free to swap the orders and place Jingyuan below and Celia on top if they match both bosses' weaknesses. But if not, you just go with whichever is stronger to fit into the harder difficulty boss. So in this case, it's going to be Gepard, so I'm going to be pairing Celia. Now, how do you decide the tank, or rather your healers, and how do you allocate this? This is especially relevant for players like me who don't have Gepard nor Bailu. Like, our only healers right now is going to be Natasha, and our only tank is going to be our Fire MC and our March. So if you guys still haven't do this, which is essentially raising March and Natasha, I highly recommend you guys to go and build them up. Even if you have Bailu and Gepard, right, you should still build them up because honestly, you need 2 healers. So Natasha is no-brainer. Until the day Losha comes and you can pull on his banner, Natasha is going to be a mainstay for for Memory of Chaos. And honestly, even if Losha comes, Natasha might still even see some use because Natasha has something that Bailu doesn't have, which is the ability to dispel crowd control, and it's extremely valuable in valuable Memory of Chaos. So Natasha might not even get power crap that fast after Losha comes. So raise on Natasha for sure. As for March, I think if you don't have Gepard, you definitely need to raise March because I was having so much difficulty, struggling so hard without raising March because my team was just completely collapsing. Like, I just couldn't keep up with the amount of damage they do. But the moment I raised March up and built her tracers and built her relic and more or less to an acceptable degree, but once you get her to like a more or less mediocre standard, the shield she provides is really high, especially when you cast them on your support. It's going to be like their entire health bar. That's how high the shield is. So definitely raise March. And after coming to that, you only have these 3 things to build with, right? So how do you allocate Fire MC, Natasha, and March? So this will depend on what type of attacks the enemies are using. So in this case, I know that for Gepard, he's more like an single target dealer, as well as this boss, the Silverman Lieutenant. They're both more or less single target damage. The only AoE that this thing, these 2 bosses have is Gepard. There's this frigid winter or some shit like that. Like, he does this huge AoE slam on the ground. That is his only AoE. But other than that, everything else is single target. His goons that he summoned, they're all single target, and he also has this pretty painful single target trust. So because of this high demand for single target, it will be an excellent choice to place March over here, and our remaining team is going to be Natasha on top. And this last slot, naturally, will go to our Fire MC. So this is how I construct my team. Of course, the unit order matters as well. You always ideally want your tank to be at the side. So this is going to look something like this. It's going to look like Natasha, Jingyuan, Tingyun, and Asta. Yep. And then for Gepard, it's gonna be Fire MC, March, Sile, and Roya. So this is gonna be ideally how your team runs. You always want your tank or the highest health units all the way at the side, so that when they're taking aggression, your carries do not take any damage at all. The next to them will be like your sub tank or like your healer. So for example, March, right? She can stay beside Fire MC because she's more or less tankier than Sile and Bronya. And Jingyuan, I'll place her beside Natasha because Jingyuan is tankier than Tingyuan and Asta because they're so freaking squishy. But this might change in the future if I get more developments in my Tingyuan and Asta's gear. But for now, Jingyuan's gonna stay at the side, and honestly, Jingyuan can appreciate the extra hits because the energy that is provided to them is gonna be very useful. Okay, so that's essentially my team comp for MOC1. And yeah, very straightforward. And let's go ahead into MOC2. Now, MOC2. This boss is gonna be 1 big robot and 1 bigger robot, right? This is the AoE boss and this is a single target boss. And this boss is just 2 of this wind horse thingy. For this team, also as you can see, there is not much we can work with around here, but we can see that this team is weak to thunder because they're both weak to thunder. So an excellent choice would be, as we mentioned, if that boss is weak to something, you want to place the element that they are weak against. So Jingyuan can deal excellently with both targets, and also it works really well with this automaton Grizzly, the fat boss, because he summons a lot of the detonation of the little tiny robots. So Jingyuan having the multi-clear can also help the mobs with quite a lot. So because of that, Jingyuan is going to be below, and our Sile team is going to be a top, and then we just form our core supports after that, right? So it's gonna be here, it's gonna be here and here, right? So then for this one, because this team is weak to fire, and also he does a lot of single target hits. Other than the wind shear ability where he triggers this arrow and hits everybody in your team, all his hits are all single target. Other than that wind shear thing. So because of this, we're gonna be slotting Fire MC with March. And then the remaining team, we're going to be placing Natasha. And Natasha also works really well with this boss because even though this is single target, but this boss is not as hard as this boss. This boss is really hard. And his Purge Order, which does a huge AoE damage to our entire team, Natasha is going to really be able to help with this because March 7 is not going to be able to cover everything that this guy throws out when it comes to AoE output. So, yep, this is my team for Phase 2, MOC2. Not really difficult as well, as long as your degree of build is well enough. I think I've cleared this when I was level 60 as well, so definitely not an issue. Now, going to MOC3. This is where difficulties start to get a little bit more difficult than 1 and 2, but still manageable as compared to the later stages. So as you can see over here, the bosses here, this guy is weak to Quantum and Fire, right? So naturally, even though, so naturally we're going to be placing our Sile team here. So it's going to be Sile, Bronya, and on top, since this boss, doesn't really have a weakness that we can align to. This guy is weak to both. This guy is weak to quantum, but this guy is weak to lightning, right? But since our bottom boss is already weak to quantum, we're gonna definitely be placing Silly below. Then on top, we're gonna be placing Jingyuan with our Jingyuan supports, Asa and Tingyun. Now, do we decide on Natasha or March for okay? This guy is definitely running Fire MC. So it's just a matter of, do you want Natasha on top or do you want Natasha in the bottom? So if you take a look at the team here, both of these bosses, they do quite a considerable amount of AoE damage. This guy has the Ever Frosting Winter or something, I think, which is an AoE hit. And this guy also does this, not a very, very strong AoE, because, okay, actually this boss is not even that difficult. As long as you clear all his mobs, right, he doesn't really do that much damage. If you are not able to kill his mobs and he devour one of the other rolling minions and he charges up this huge single target damage, then that's going to be a problem. But as long as you kill his mobs, it's going to be fine. So, and since we're already running Silly, which clears mobs exceptionally well, it's not going to be that much of an issue. So we really need to worry about this guy, which the Frigid Winter is, the Everlasting Winter is quite painful. So because of this, we will be running Natasha in the below to deal with the AoE. And on top, this guy is single target, and this guy is technically AoE, but this guy is weak to freeze, and they're both weak to freeze, or rather ice. So we're gonna be placing March on top. So that's how I hope you guys can understand my thought process here, like how I build my teams, suiting to which content, which bosses, which weaknesses, and what kind of attack they do. I try to mold your team to fit into the criteria. Yeah, so this is essentially the team I use for phase 3. And now for phase 4, now 4 and 5 onwards, it's really gonna be not that straightforward. It took me quite a while to get 3 stars, especially 3 stars, because having no down characters for a team with relatively low quality supports is going to be very, very difficult, especially when your Asta and Tingyun are very weak, which is where I am right now, right? So with that being said, now take a look over here. This guy is the guy with the I think the stacks, the golden order stacks, and then this guy is the horse guy. So that's that. And then Gepard and our this dude. Okay, this is exactly the repeat of MOC1 actually. So MOC4 actually is just the exact repeat of MOC1, and because of this, we'll just be using the exact same team. They just have slightly higher stats, but they don't really change the outcome of the match that much. So we're just gonna be using the same thing. Alright, so next for MOC5. MOC5, I would say it's not super difficult, but you definitely need to be careful to reach 3 stars, because this guy's purge order does a ton of damage, and because the weaknesses exactly aligns with our 2 carry, right? So we're definitely going to be running Silly on top, and we're definitely going to be running the Jingyuan comp below. And our Jingyuan comp, you know how squishy our Tingyun and Asta are. So if this guy's purge order or he lands like this single target damage into your supports, it might be a little bit difficult to have no down characters, but just need to grind a little bit of RNG. Not super difficult as well. So yeah, once this is down here, we can just go ahead and place our support, which is on Natasha, because we really need the AoE heal to deal with the fat robot. The fat robot always pairs with Natasha, essentially. Then on top, we just go with our Fire MC and March. So this is a team I use for stage 5. Right, so our final stage, stage 6. Now, stage 6, MOC6, I'm having difficulty because of this particular boss, the Searing Prowler boss. This boss, the mechanic is, his very first turn, he does 1 hit, and his next turn, he does 1 hit that has an AoE, which affects 2 units. Then his third turn is going to be charging this thing called Mania, which immediately follows up with a huge AoE that hits your entire team, all 4 units. And the downtime, or rather the action value differences between his Mania, which is a charge, and his ultimate is really, really small. I think it's less than 30 or 40 action value. So there's really no time for you to try to interject or try to break them. Like if you can break them when they're Mania, then that would be ideal. But if you cannot break them, the only way my team at least can survive both of them outing at the same time after Mania is for Natasha to slot in her heal. Right? So after the first Searing Prowler casts his ultimate, my Natasha's ult has to be up to cast her ultimate immediately, so that it can heal my team's HP back to moderately high again to tank the second boss's ultimate. If not, my teammate Asta will just straight up die. As you can see from clip later that I'm going to attach, they just straight up die from already at full HP if I take them both at their charged up ultimate. So definitely an issue. And it's an issue that I'm trying to fix right now. I think it's definitely doable as long as I try to time my break right. If I don't time my break right, then I need to make sure that my Natasha has an ultimate after the first ultimate. So that's that for stage 6. The first stage is actually not that difficult. We just run the standard Silly, Bronya, Fire MC, and March team. So it's really not that difficult. And then our second team is just gonna be this. So until I clear this, I don't think I'll be able to post the video because, as I said a lot of times, I've been going overseas this week. But maybe if I can record it on the phone, I'll let you guys know. But right now my progress is gonna be stuck at phase 6, but I think it's definitely doable before Sunday ends, because by then I think my entire team should be at level 70, so maybe that will get a little bit easier, who knows. But yeah, so yeah, that was essentially my clear for this week's MOC. I don't think it's a super difficult task, but I definitely agree that there is some degree of challenges to it, because after all, this is meant to be the end game content, and this difficulty is just only going to get higher once you reach MOC 7, 8, 9, and 10, because those stages you will definitely need at least a Gepard or a Bailu. If not, having much alone will not be able to help deal with the huge amount of AoE that your second team is going to do. Like Natasha maybe still can make it, but honestly even Natasha's healing is not that great. Like you really desperately need a Gepard or Bailu to deal with the amount of damage that you're getting from 7 onwards. So until that happens, we'll just see where it goes. I don't think my comp's degree of progression will change that much, even with the Silver Wolf banner coming up. I think my next breakpoint will either be trying to either I get a Bailu or Gepard from off PT, or I get Rosha's banner, which is gonna be another like 6 or 5 weeks away from now. So until that day happens, more or less. Also, of course, we need to look at the buffs, right? Because right now the buffs is favoring Erudition and Hunt unit, so my Silly Engineer is definitely doing the work. But next week onwards, there will definitely be a different buff, because I think buffs are a monthly thing. So we'll just see and go ahead and see what kind of changes they bring to the table. And with that, that's all for today, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.